Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. We've got one of our sponsors on today in Tim Froud, who's the CEO of Sokoman Minerals. And we've got several things to talk about, but right off the hop, I want to talk about the deal that they were able to pull off with Piedmont Lithium, a very well-known name in the lithium space. And now they're involved with your lithium project, Tim. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we can get into that news you had on the Piedmont deal.
Well, good to see you again, Allan, and thanks a lot for having me on and giving me a chance to, I guess, expand or give you solid explanations as to every working detail of this thing. Probably won't happen because there's a lot of details to look after. But anyway,
as they say, moving parts.
Moving, and some of them are still moving a little bit. So there's still lots of business to do here. Vinland has effectively been created, as has Killick, but clearly there's more needs to be done before they actually become a trading entity. We need to do an IPO and things like that. So that just doesn't happen overnight, as you know, right? So you've been in this, you've dealt with the startups and things like that. So you know that these things do take a little time. So, but like I said, unfortunately, either the market just didn't get it or didn't like it or whatever. But we never got much traction from it. But you know what? Several people a lot smarter than me have told me this is a brilliant deal, and kudos for your team for getting it done. And a lot of this has to go to Steve Stairs. Steve is a real thinker in terms of the business side of things, far more than I am. And I was more or less along for the ride and support. And of course, our lawyer Gord Fretwell, who's gone through a hard time. He lost his wife recently, unfortunately, and had to deal with that. And to get this thing done, on the back of that, I really have to tip my hat to him. And he's a real hero for us. And
well, I've had professional experience with both of them, Gord and Steve. And the Stairs family is very seasoned in exploration and finding things, and Gord's a fantastic lawyer, and I'm sad to hear about his wife. Getting that deal done, I thought it was very impressive. And obviously Piedmont did as well, because they put out an awfully bullish or positive news release about the deal. And I think what some people may not have been aware, may not have been on the top of the mind, is that this is going to create a public entity that Sokoman is a significant shareholder of, and will be able to benefit from bringing this project forward. I think that's a real big thing in this whole deal.
Well, absolutely, and that's just one aspect of this thing. But I will key on that for a moment, Allan. I mean, think about it. I mean, Vinland Lithium will be one of the tightest ships, publicly traded ships in the lithium space. With right now, there's currently 10 million shares between what Benton and Sokoman own 80%, and Piedmont with the 20. Where else are you going to see a company that's got 2 million in cash in the bank? It's sitting there right now. 10 million shares outstanding, and has access through Killick, its 100% owned subsidiary, $12 million in non-dilutionary exploration funds. Brilliant. We don't have to issue a share to get $12 million, obviously over time. Yeah. But think about that. How many companies did that last week or last month?
No dilution to bring the project forward. And I think that's maybe the crux of what people are not realizing in this deal, is that Sokoman is now a big shareholder in this tightly held entity with money in the bank and a publicly trading company of the future, and that will be able to be advanced without dilution.
That's right. So and that's the thing. And we intend to keep Vinland as tight as we can for as long as we can, because Well, look at Piedmont. You know how many shares they've got issued and outstanding?
No.
20 million less.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
it. That's it. Right? Brilliant. So they like that model, obviously, and this is the one that they applied to this project. And they want to keep that, the tight control and the reins on this thing. Now, they're obviously for Vinland to move forward, there will be, we will have to add some shares.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, we need to get 150 investors, individual investors or entities, just by regulation. So yes, there will be some dilution there, but I mean, that's $1 a share minimum there, right? So we need to get 150 investors. So Steve and I are going to be on the road. There's actually a mining conference here in St. John's this coming week. It's the biggest one in Atlantic Canada. It's the annual review of activities by the Department of Mines in combination with the local branch of the CIM, Canadian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, here in St. John's. There'd be probably 1,000 people down for this, and many companies exhibiting. So after that show's over next week, we're going to hit the road and seek out those investors, and obviously strong hands will be preferred. And then going forward, I mean, here's, like I said, Vinland will be financed, and with non-dilutionary funds, pouring in from Piedmont. I mean, how is this a bad deal? Plus 10 million split between Benton and Sokoman in Piedmont shares. And we've all seen what's happened to the price of lithium. The market is down. And of course, a couple months ago, Piedmont was $65 a share. Now they're about 30. So we're actually, unfortunately for the share price, but good for us, we're going to get more shares as a result. So nothing has changed. Nothing has changed with respect to Piedmont.
I just was
in fact, now they're actually a producer, right? So
I was just reading a report the other day about that they're expecting 2025 to be a pretty significant deficit in the supply of lithium. So I don't think it's very far into the future that lithium is going to be on its next bull run, because there's just not enough everybody thinks that lithium is so easy and it's all over the place. And I used to hear the same thing about diamonds, Tim. I spent a lot of time in diamonds, but the reality is finding what you can mine is a whole different story. And
yes.
Piedmont, as you said, is a miner, and they obviously gave a ringing endorsement of your project.
Well, they looked at a lot of ground. Lamont Leatherman, their VP exploration, he's been down now 3 times on our ground, and he loves it. We have a structural guy down that they sent down now to help figure out some of the knots that we've encountered on this project, and just to get a better feel for the overall prospectivity of other areas of the property where we haven't drilled yet. And I think that's something like we can't state enough. I mean, we've really only explored 20% of this ground in detail. We're scrambling to get first pass geochem coverage done, and with each batch of results that come in, we're seeing again, and it's no secret, 100 to 200 ppm lithium in soils, and that's the signature we see where we know we have dikes. So how many dikes are out there that we haven't seen yet, right? So the future looks pretty good here, and I must say, obviously, if this deal goes through to fruition, there's going to be something significant,
through the whole thing.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, with all things done and said, with 10 million in their stock to start with, that could be 20 or 30 million dollars worth of stock, if the markets pick up, like you said, in 2025. I mean, that's a forward-looking statement. But anyway, so the value of what we have, could grow tremendously, and just in their stock that we have. So there's so many positives here. It's amazing.
And I know how the back end of these kind of things work a little bit, Tim. You must have been on pins and needles wanting to talk about this for a long time and just couldn't say nothing. You guys you were in a blackout period there for quite a while, right?
Yeah, well, to say anything about it, and of course to act on it and things like that. And now we're obviously going to be doing in Sokoman, not and concurrently at some point down the road, financing in Vinland, but to get those initial shareholders. But I was hoping to get a bit of a bounce for Sokoman's sake and Benton's sake, because we're spending money, right, on other projects like Moosehead and Fleur de Lis, and we need funds, and we'll need funds at some point. So I was hoping to get a bit of a bounce there, which unfortunately didn't happen. So it's going to have to be the hard way. Hopefully we can get some mileage out of this deal with the more talking we do about it, like with you and obviously your show and your fans. So hopefully we'll get some respect at some point in the market, and but if not, we just have to keep doing our job, right, and focus. And
Well, I wouldn't
Fleur
be
de Lis, you mentioned, yeah, sorry, you
I
mentioned
wouldn't
Fleur de
be
Lis
too
earlier.
discouraged about that, Tim. Sometimes these deals take a bit of explanation to sort of for people to understand. And then I think as Vinland gets trading, it will start to make people understand more about the value proposition of this project. And then if Piedmont gets a little bit of joy in the market, you get an extra kick there. So I think it's a brilliant deal. And what one of the fundamental things of why I think it's a brilliant deal is now that is going to be in the hands of a bigger company that knows what they're doing and has the funding to really move it forward significantly. And it allows you guys to focus on what you've been spending a lot of time on, which is your Moosehead project and Fleur de Lis. Why don't we start out and sort of give people an update on Moosehead? I'm very bullish on that project, Tim, but I'm also aware of having watched what happened in Australia with the Swan Zone. They had a huge advantage in that they had many years of mining, sort of looking at the rocks and being able to see from underground what those rocks look like, that enabled them to find the Swan Zone. And you guys have sort of been looking at it from the eyes of a drill hole. These things are complex, but the prize is certainly worth the effort. And what I see at Moosehead is a lot of gold in the drilling, and you're still working on trying to figure that whole thing out.
Well, and like I said, I mean, each hole could bring a surprise or a new discovery. And I'm going to give a little something away here right now, not too much, but I am working on a press release for next week. I hate pre-announcing announcements, but anyway, it is time to get out something on a new zone. There may have been some whispers of that. We've actually encountered a new structure at Moosehead. We've hit it with 4 holes. And the interesting thing about it is that it sits in the same relative orientation as the 463 zone, basically perpendicular to the main trends. Again, we're seeing that thing, only this time it's on the hanging wall side of the eastern trend, as opposed to 463 being in the footwall. This is, on the up dip side of the main eastern trend. So we've hit it in 4 holes. We have assays, I think, for 3 holes. We were hoping to get the 4th hole back, but it's still early days. I can say, I'm not seeing great gobs of visible gold, not yet. But the fact that we are seeing some of the things that we like to see when we are in, the good stuff. We're seeing a little bit of sphalerite. We're seeing a little bit of belangerite. Obviously, we're seeing quartz, right? So, I mean, but it's a tighter structure. And I think that's another thing that's similar to the 463. It's in less deformed rock. So it's a tighter package. And so instead of having quartz sort of going all over the place as little stringers and veinlets, it's more of a solid vein, up to a couple of meters, 3 meters, I think was the biggest we've seen so far. Like I said, I'm giving a few little things away here, but the fact that we are seeing some of the things we like to see, we're not seeing great gobs of visible gold. I can say that. So, what the grades will be. If I get any gold in this, Allan, I'm over the moon, because we know we're in a gold environment, right? We've only drilled 4 holes. We drilled a fence of 2, a section of 2 holes, and then we moved 25 meters and drilled another 2 holes. So we got 4 holes. And we got it nailed down now in terms of its strike, right? We know that, right? Because we've got at least the 3-point problem done, right? So we know with 4 holes, basically it's orientation, and it is off trend from the main eastern trend. Again, more similar to the same sort of setting in terms of its orientation as the 463 zone. So are we in another footwall environment from an as yet unseen trend further to the east? This is the easternmost holes we've ever drilled.
Oh, so it's way over there to the east?
Yes, not unlike Iceberg and Iceberg East at our friends across the street at Newfound, right? Off trend, right? So this could be a whole new thing. So right now we've got Ryan Newman, our exploration manager, is proposing a minimum of 2,500 meters of drilling for this new structure.
Wow.
To begin right away.
You're bringing up some really interesting topics there, in that, one of the things that makes Fosterville very interesting is that the secondary faulting, the importance of the secondary faulting, and the complexity of that faulting. The complexity is what sort of enables those fluids carrying the gold to make their way up from very deep in these orogenic gold systems. And if you tag one of those, it can be following it deeper, but it's figuring out that structural story that's so important. And maybe this one can help you over at the 463 interpretation as well. Did I get that right?
Like I said, it's still early days there. We've just got the 4 holes in it. We're comfortable. We're using oriented core, so I mean we're pretty comfortable with this trend. And yeah, it's 463-ish in its orientation. Now the other thing people need to remember about 463 was, it was a great intersection, but there was also low grade in it. There was stuff there that ran a half a gram, 2 grams, 3 grams, 4 grams.
Well, that's the nature. That's the nature.
Maybe that's where we are with this new system. But we only know we've only drilled it over 25-meter strike length, and it's open in all directions. So we could be 25 meters away on the east side or the west side or down plunge from bonanza stuff. So that's why we've got to drill a bunch of holes here to fully assess what's going on. But it's brand new. It's new, and we are seeing signs that it's got potential. Like I said, just give us some time. Let us drill another 20 or 30 holes in this, and we'll judge it then.
And that's sort of the nature of these nuggety orogenic gold systems, is that you could be a foot or two away from, you might even be in it, but you don't see it because it's nuggety, and you might be only inches from it, to feet from it. But you start seeing gold in these orogenic gold systems, and that's a big event.
Yeah. So anyway, very excited about something brand new. Like I said, never say never. With these projects, and again, are we in a totally new footwall environment? This is like a couple of 100 meters further east than anything we know, right? So and the curious thing is, not the curious thing, but a very interesting fact is, Noranda in 1987 reported finding a pyritic quartz float near where we collared one of the holes in this new zone that ran 10.3 grams.
Wow.
And there was no mention of sphalerite. There was no mention of belangerite. So it's different, but it's still got some decent grade, right? 10 grams. And you know what? There's lots of that material in the eastern trend, in the south parent zone, in 463. There's lots of material there that runs 1 or 2 grams, and we're within a high grade environment. So, like I said, those bonanza grades come along, and we've got dozens of holes, with multi-ounce, gram meter intersections.
Yeah.
It's not like there's just one hole that gave us, the good stuff, and the rest has just been, low grade, modest stuff. I mean, it would be nice to hit high grade with every hole, but that doesn't happen, as you know, right? 80 to 90% of your holes are going to be a couple grams or less or more, whatever. But like I said, this is a totally new structure, and we've got 4 holes in it. We will be putting out some news on that next week. Again, ahead of the major show that's taking place in St. John's. Oh, and by the way, a little bit of a scoop here. We've been informed, Benton and Sokoman, that we are going to be honored with the Explorer of the Year award at this year's event for our work at Golden Hope, based on the lithium discovery, right? And bringing in a major partner and, putting Newfoundland on the map as a destination for lithium. So it's quite an honor. And it's the second time Sokoman's been honored like that. The first was in 2019. We were honored because of our work at Moosehead. So it's nice when you get these things. It doesn't mean anything in the market, but you know what? As a geologist, as an explorer, to be given an award like that, it's very something to be proud of, for sure.
Absolutely. You were kind of a leader in the efforts on the gold in these orogenic gold systems in Newfoundland. You were there ahead of Newfound Gold. But before we get off of this subject, because I do want to talk about fleur-de-lis, you mentioned there that never say never, and it reminded me Rob McEwen was just at the Beaver Creek conference about a month ago, and someone asked him about why he still loves exploration so much, and he was talking about how at Red Lake, they had mined and found a lot of gold there, and then out of the blue, 15 miles or so from where they were, Great Bear came out of the blue and made their discovery. And he was an early investor in that and made it off quite well. And it reminds me of what you just said there about never say never, because he was saying that you never know with exploration. You could be, we were 15 miles from that. We didn't find it. And actually, before Great Bear found it, there was probably a couple hundred holes drilled into that system before they even got it. And so, that's the fun of exploration, Tim.
Well, it is. And another little interesting side thing that I found out about that Great Bear discovery was that sitting in a box, round core with visible gold in it, went undetected on that property. That's what I heard. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, apparently there was a bit of gold in the box. It was fine. It was fine. But yeah, so
I can ask Bob Singh about that. He's a good friend of mine. In fact, I was the one who I was consulting for Great Bear at one time, and I'm the guy who got Bob Singh to come to work with Great Bear, because Bob's a very talented geologist, and
sure is, yeah.
Kind of the one that put the story together, looked over all that gold core and digitized it, and realized that some of those holes were not going in the right direction. And it just goes to show you, Tim, these orogenic gold systems and other kind of gold systems, you gotta do some serious work. Before we switch over to fleur-de-lis, I still have this 463 zone on my mind a lot. It's not often that you hit a jewelry box hits in and they truly are when you look at the grade and the thickness. What are you guys doing on 463 to figure that part of the story out?
Well, we did drill some holes around there initially. There was a press release, I think, came out around earlier this year about hole 512, 505, etc. I think 519 were drilled in that same area, and we were looking for
But they
some
were
sort of a
set
shoot.
up quite a distance away and coming back at it, weren't they? My
Yeah, well,
memory might be
basically,
off.
we had to kind of drill the east trend down dip to get at it, because that's how it sits, right? It sits perpendicular. Like eastern trend is like this, 463 is this. So
Yeah,
we had to drill basically parallel to, it's kind of against convention, right? You drill, down the dip of structures to, you should be drilling through them, just to
right.
get true thickness, and so
But when
everybody
it's
don't
going
accuse you.
like this, you are aiming for that.
Yeah, so people don't accuse you of, an extended intersection because you drilled it down dip. Well, that's the way you have to look for this structure, because that's the way it sits in the ground. So we did drill a few holes, and there's still room, Alan. It's obviously a chute or something, right? It's not, a massive zone, 100 meters by 25 meters, solid of material like that. It's clear that these things are tight. They're in the footwall. There's less deformed rock, so they're tight, and they can be missed. But hole 519 did hit some good grade over a modest width, I think a couple of meters. So it's still open. So we will go back there, but because those are deeper holes, and meterage is precious right now. I mean, we're probably going to finish the 100,000 meter milestone that we had. It doesn't mean we're going to stop drilling, not a chance. We probably only have about 1,200 meters left in that initial program. So it's going to be a milestone to drill, the 100,000 meters, but we're not stopping. We're keeping going, right? We've got money to spend to drill more holes. It's just going to be add-ons from now on, right? So yes, to answer your question, we will be doing more work there, but I think in the shallow, near surface, a new structure with veining. We are expecting to get some gold, but we don't know how much. But like I said, any gold in the new zone, and it's going to be called the 552 zone, because that's I think it's 552, because that was the whole number it was first hit in. So we've run out of compass directions, right? We got east, west.
Well,
So
it might be 552, but it's number one in that area.
well, it is, and like I said, you never know in these systems when and where you're going to find something, and we could have a whole structural repeat basically of everything we've drilled so far.
Perfect.
That's
Well,
possible, right? Forward-looking statement.
there you go. Well, that's we use the truth machine to figure out how forward-looking and accurate that statement is, and that's the nature of exploration.
Yeah, and we have 2 rigs still at Moosehead. So for people that are curious, there's 2 rigs still employed at Moosehead. So
now, Florida Lee really has my attention as well, Tim. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for Ireland. The reason I say that is I was one of the first, and not very many people picked Dalradian. I started following it at 25 cents, and I talked about it throughout there right through to takeover. And
congratulations.
What's that?
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. And I still have a lot of people that follow my reports that like that kind of story. And some of the recent news you've had out from there, it's starting to sound a lot like what I heard in the Dalradian days. And you went over to Ireland. We're actually looking at that deposit and sort of doing the investigation of what to look for, what they have over there, and the similarities with Florida Lee. I'm very excited about Florida Lee. Why don't you give us a little insight into what's happening at Florida Lee?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And you know what? I think Fleur de Lis is the next one for us. It's again, it's 100% owned. We've been nursing it along simply because we have to manage our funds, and it's a large property. So to fully assess a large property, it either takes time and it will take some money. But Now I think it's time to bring fleur-de-lis along a little more aggressively. Well, for one thing, each year it gets a little more expensive, of course, to hold large blocks of ground. So we need to make some decisions on this ground. So for a couple of years, we've been banging away at fleur-de-lis, mainly with just old-fashioned sort of straw work, prospecting, tills, and tills have worked very well. In fact, one of the reasons we did go to Ireland, and we did go there in June, and we had a great trip, by the way. The weather was great. Apparently, the best weather they've seen in a century. We seemed to bring it over to them. But anyway, nothing but sun, which was shocking. But anyway, to learn, like what, and not so much just to stand and look at ore, because once you got ore in your hand, you know it, right? What does this system look like half a kilometer away? What does it look like a kilometer away? What can we expect to see in terms of, is there mineral zoning, all that kind of stuff, right? So, we're trying to put some science around this. And well, when we left, we were just that full of wows from what we saw, that we know we have, at Fleur-de-Lis. So many of the boxes that you'd want to check for, for a Coronalt, which is the deposit that Dalradian had. We checked them off, and Fleur-de-Lis now I think needs to be brought to the fore. Right now there's nothing in our market cap for Fleur. There's nothing in our market cap for anything we have, really. But anyway,
you're not the only one, by the way, Tim. And I think that scenario is going to change. We've got a lot better market for gold lately, and I think that that's going to keep going. And I don't think it's very long before gold explorers are going to get some attention.
Yeah. So with like 1,286 till samples taken over a 450 square kilometer property, we ended up at the end of the day with a 30-kilometer long gold and till anomaly. So that's a pretty big haystack to start poking needles into. So again, the reason why we went, to Ireland was to look at, how do we, like, what do we need to be looking for in terms of signs in the rocks? And we learned a lot. And we were only back a month, and we had, a new zone, what looks to be a new zone, suddenly appear in what we call the Golden Bull at Fleur-de-Lis. The first visible gold we've seen there. Not that it's important to have visible gold. In fact, Coronalt is noted for its fineness. The gold is very fine. It's almost like flour, like powder. And you know what? We go back through all of our tills. All the gold is very, very fine. So again, we've got that similarity. Very little in terms of a signature around it. Most of the gold is encapsulated within pyrite, so you don't see visible gold, but we did. So again, telling us that there's possible that we could have, some locally high grade areas in this. But overall, the similarities in terms of the structural style, the types of rocks, the degree of metamorphism, these are high grade rocks in terms of their metamorphic, grade. But the other key thing was the cross-cutting structures. And you can draw a line to cross over the Bayvert Fault, which is the equivalent of the Omagh Thrust in Ireland. And guess what happens on the other side of the Bayvert Fault? You've got Paleozoic rocks with gold in them, just like they do in Ireland. I mean, it's stunning, right? So, yeah. So anyway, the area where we found this Golden Bull showing is slated, proposed to be logged off this winter, which, hey, have at it, boys, free trenching, right? So this whole area is going to be torn up by a logging company. Save us the problem of doing that. Thank you very much. And quite possibly, exposing and even opening up bedrock, with gold-bearing quartz veins in them. So, but to facilitate, the identification of structures, which are key. All gold needs structures, right? You're not going to get gold in a solid block of rock. It has to, get pushed in there somehow, right? So we're going to do a drone-based mag survey, and tight-spaced,
Before we get on to that,
Yep.
Tim, why don't you tell our audience that are not geologists and don't really study this stuff like we do, why what happened over in Ireland is important in Newfoundland?
Well, basically, what we're sitting on is the same structure. It's just now separated by the Atlantic Ocean, which opened up over millions of years. I mean, Ireland and Newfoundland were a hell of a lot closer at one point in time. So the same exact package of rocks that we have known as our Fleur de Lis project, you can transplant that block of rock and lay it down next to those rocks in Ireland, and you would not know the difference in them. So there's the same. It's just that plate tectonics has pushed it's pushed us to the west and them to the east, and yeah, it's just the way things are, right?
And
Big structures.
Newfound Gold in their early days used to talk a lot about this this similarity to Ireland as well, and that sort of led them to a lot of gold.
Yeah, no, and again, no secret there, right? So, yeah, no, big structures, big gold, and that's one of my slides in my presentation. And no truer words have been spoken. I mean, look at the Destor Porcupine, right? I mean, big structure, big gold, but you don't necessarily need to be right on that structure. What you're looking for are features that either cross-cut it or are offshoots from that, right? The 070 trend in Ontario, for instance, that was the one, right? The 070. The Destor was a different orientation than that. So more east-west. But anyway,
and these big
yeah,
structures are important because they're crustal. They go very deep, and that's what you need in order to get the heat to create these orogenic gold systems where the gold can follow that main structure, and as it gets closer to surface, it sort of spreads out into those secondary faulting. I get that right, Tim?
you got her.
Yeah.
What you said. What you said.
Okay, now to bring it forward, you started to mention before I interrupted you about the geophysics, and this can be very helpful in seeing the main structure and the secondary structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is some historical mag done there, but it's very coarse, like very coarse line spacing, probably 400 meters or something.
Oh.
We're going down to 25 meter spacings, right? So
Perfect.
And 50s, just to get coverage, peripheral to the main area of interest.
And you're using a drone, right? So you can get right on top of the surface, which is important in geophysical surveys as well.
Yeah, it's almost as good as a walking mag survey, right? But the area is too large to cover with and the expense of putting a grid in and things like that. It just makes sense to do the drone, right? So I know a couple of guys here that do that work, and we'll then take that data. One of our directors, Colin Bowditch, is very good with playing with geophysics and turning it over and inverting it and doing various cuts and things. So he knows what the prize is here, and so yep, we're going to get that data probably looking at mid-November to do that, because like I said, this show is coming up now, and it's basically everyone in Newfoundland is coming to St. John's. It's going to be one massive party, right? So, well, I shouldn't say that, not like the PDAC at all, right? No.
Mini PDAC.
A mini PDAC, yes.
So sort of the steps, you've done the surface work, you've gone out there, did that boots on the ground, walking around, looking down, kicking rocks. You found a bunch of interesting stuff. It looks similar to what's happened over at Dalradian in Ireland. And now you're going to do the geophysics to sort of see the big structural story. And you may also have the advantage of the logging exposing some bedrock, so you could actually see veins at the surface. And then you'll get ready for drilling, I imagine.
Yes, for sure. So they're going to create, the logging company that is, they're going to create all kinds of access for us. So yeah, come springtime when the snow melts and we start to see lots of white stuff sticking up, where we couldn't see anything before. I'm quite excited about this. So look at what we got looking forward to now, Allan. The deal with Piedmont, moving forward, non-dilutionary, $12 million in exploration,
Moosehead.
a new zone at Moosehead developing. And of course, now we're bringing Fleur de Lis along with the new discovery there. And yeah, we own the ground 100%. So lots of good stuff to look forward to moving forward.
Sounds like you got a lot of catalysts that we're going to be able to do a bunch of interviews about, Tim.
Anytime, Allan.
Well, you know, Tim, you're one of the guys that I really like to talk to, and I'm always hoping for and crossing my fingers for, because you're my kind of guy when it comes to exploration. You're a treasure hunter at heart. You never give up, and you're always looking at those rocks and using that truth machine. And you know, I always love our conversations, Tim.
Well, thank you. And just as a note to your listeners, something we were chatting about before we went live. Again, you mentioned the exploration side of things. It is my passion. And I did mention to you just before the show started that Benton and Sokoman are going to be honored with the Explorer of the Year award for our efforts at Golden Hope, and obviously making Newfoundland now a viable and valid lithium destination. We've snagged a major U.S. player in the business. We're going to give birth to a new entity and a tight ship with funds in the bank, plus non-dilutionary exploration dollars. I mean, plus Benton and Sokoman will split 10 million over the life of the deal. In Piedmont stock, which right now is at a low, so we're going to get more shares based on that. Unfortunately, for current shareholders of Piedmont who may not be happy, it makes me a little happy to have a lower price. Give us more shares, and you know what? The model that they built this new company on is exactly the one that worked so well for them. I mean, here's Piedmont. They have only like 20 million shares outstanding, right? I mean, yeah, it's amazing. I was shocked when I saw it, actually. I had to look and make sure there wasn't like my eyes weren't crossed, but yeah.
And now you can focus Sokoman on gold exploration. And getting back to something I said earlier in the show, Tim, one of the most important parts of the gold sector is exploration, and it's certainly not getting enough love right now. But these mining companies, they're mining out everything that's old, and they're not replacing what they're mining out. And that's why I think exploration is probably the most important part of the whole mining sector. And right now it's not getting love, but the fundamentals of supply and demand and mining and who's wanting more and more gold. We could talk a lot about what is happening with gold, but fundamentally, I think that exploration needs more love. And I think the key to that is the price of gold. And I can see that we're not very far from when I think we'll get more excitement towards exploration. And you guys got a couple of hell of a good projects there at Moosehead and Fleur de Lis.
Yeah, thanks again, Allan. And yeah, I mean, clearly I'm biased, but I do believe that they are among the top handful of properties in the province. And we've worked hard. And don't forget, we also got the Explorer of the Year award in 2019 for Moosehead. So it's a sense of pride, to be honored this way as an explorer, to be called Explorer of the Year. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that,
in Newfoundland, right? And that's quickly becoming a pretty important place for mining. And you've devoted most of your life, your professional life, to Newfoundland. So good on you, Tim. You deserve it, man.
Yeah, thanks. And I know early on when we were exploring at Golden Hope, the lithium thing, some people accuse us of being ambulance chasers or whatever, but we weren't looking for lithium when we found it. We were looking for gold, and so I'd like to think that we've done a good job with that. The $3 or $4 million that we've collectively put in there, Benton and ourselves, I'm now looking at a deal worth $24 million. So that's a 600% return. So I don't think that's too shabby a job.
And it might turn into a lot more than that.
A lot. It could turn into a lot more. Obviously, results driven. But I do believe that Piedmont aren't here for a couple of months and then take off. I think They're going to commit to this. We're also looking at universities applying for grant money to spend up to $1.5 million in deep research on this project. Right,
Wow.
that's not even factored into this, right? So we've got Memorial University, we've got St. Francis Xavier, I think, are looking at funding. We got at least 3 or 4 of the Geological Survey of Newfoundland's top geoscientists, nose deep in this project. I mean, it's and the minister loves it. It's in his district.
Good.
The Minister of Mines, Allan Parsons. Oh my God, Mr. Parsons.
You're thinking of the Alan Parsons project, the music band, I think, there, Tim.
Yes,
You got that stuck in your head.
Andrew Parsons, sorry.
Andrew.
Yeah, and we'll be meeting with him next week as well, just to give him an update. And again, everybody's excited. Golden Hope, I think, never got full credit for what we've done there and what we can do there. And obviously now with a partner like Piedmont, a lot more is going to be done there.
Well, you're an explorer's explorer, as they say, Tim, and keep up with the good work. And I'm looking forward to our future interviews.
Thanks, Allan. All the best and take care.
I will. I'm going to close it off. We can chat at the other end, Tim.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
there you go, folks. I'm glad to have been able to have Tim on the show to talk about what's going on with the Piedmont deal and what they can now focus on for gold at Moosehead and the exciting things that are happening there, and Fleur-de-Lis not too far down the road. I think collectively, Sokoman has quite a good news flow going forward, and I think that they're one for you to do your homework on. As always, I'm not making buying or selling recommendations. I'm merely trying to highlight the quality of the projects of the companies that, in this case, are sponsors of my shows. And it's important for you to do your homework and speak to your financial advisors about your risk profile and all that sort of stuff. Because from my perspective, I've spent 30 years in the business assessing projects and being involved with projects, and I only invite those that sort of go through my filter to invite them as sponsors. And really great to have Sokoman on, and I'm looking forward to our future interviews. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.